Hello, this is Anjana Meenakshi. I'm a reporter with the News Minute, and we are at the News Minute News Laundry's Media Conclave, the Media Rumble, and we have with us investigative journalist Mr. Josy Joseph. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anjana.
Thank you. So, I'd like to start off by asking you something which I think we've been discussing for a long time now. Do you think investigative journalism in India has come to an end, or it's on its last legs? Do you think it's ailing, or what do you think is the future of investigative journalism in India?
No, I think actually that question is framed from the lens of the mainstream media
Okay.
and the propaganda units. But actually, we are seeing the golden era of investigative journalism in India. Though it's being done by a smaller number of people, you are seeing for the first time in history that they are breaching tax havens of Mauritius. They are taking on the biggest crony capitals company ever seen in India, Adani Group, and the most bullying government. And see the implications of what their findings. First of all, see the quality of that journalism is that they're able to read through millions of documents and prove how Adani is manipulating stock market, how governments are favoring them, etc., etc. Not just Adani, Ambani over this. That's a quality. Second is that today many of them are being treated globally at par by global journalists, sharing bylines, sharing stories, right? So you'll see their bylines in Washington Post, The Guardian, etc. The third thing is that they are doing this job at one of the most difficult times in our memory. Despite dozens of police cases, defamation cases, they are not giving in. I think it's actually we are living through one of the most glorious periods of investigative journalism when journalists have really stepped up the quality of journalism. Second, they've gained a global recognition for their work. And third, despite all the efforts of the government, they're not giving in. So I think we should cheer that and we should be proud of this march.
But I suppose the concern, especially for me as a young journalist, instinctively is to worry about whether all of this is an echo chamber of some kind, right? That activists respond, people who are reading long form investigative pieces respond, and maybe courts respond, and there is sedition we deal with and things like that.
Yeah.
But how much of this trickles down? It's like a gush up of information and not so much trickle down. Is that fair to say?
No, in the last Lok Sabha election, if you see, I think it was CSDS survey, which said that 52% of the people were aware of the favors that Adani was receiving. They were aware of the security concerns around EVM. They were aware of the electoral bonds. And I think that's done by a few independent media houses and some independent journalists. So do not go by the sound and the loudness of the social media or the echo chambers of the other side or of this side. Look at the impact of it. Ordinary people are responding to it. If ordinary people are listening to us, which means journalism is thriving. It's not thriving in the newsrooms of the mainstream media. It is not thriving on the printed pages of newspapers. It is thriving in the little small newsrooms of the Newsnet and the News Laundry and the Wire and Caravan and others across the country.
Okay, that is heartening for me to hear as somebody who's in one of these independent newsrooms. But what do we do when the government continues to remain unresponsive? Big corporations continue to remain unresponsive, right? Because the idea is to hold them accountable and to ensure that by holding them accountable, there's some form of very visible, evident justice which takes place. And if that doesn't happen, then where do we go from there?
So each human being, each institution is given a certain degree of shamelessness. We have to grant them. And I think we are living through a very era of when politicians, governments, corporations, a large part of judiciary, bureaucracy, even media have heightened their levels of shamelessness. That's okay. But there is a ceiling to it. So there is a ceiling to their capacity to harass, intimidate. There is a limit to which they can go in spreading lies and creating hatred. So the recipe for being a good, consistent journalist through life is to be extremely optimistic and not to look at the negatives of it. And optimism is the most important fertilizer for great journalism.
So one of the things I also wanted to ask you was about corruption. And I remember hearing an old talk of yours where you said that a lot of young people in the audience, you were speaking somewhere, are not as concerned about corruption as they used to be. And that is a problem because everyone is an aspiring business owner, aspiring entrepreneur. And that was, I think you started it off as an anecdote, but I feel like instinctively corruption has gone a little bit on the back foot because we're focused on issues pertaining to secularism, on marginalization of certain groups of people over other groups of people. So where does corruption stand in all this? And alongside that, the other question I want to ask you is that do you think we have put corruption on the back burner so much so that now it is not even as big a topic of discussion as it should possibly be?
So there are two aspects to your question. One is about the younger generation. I think we have the first generation that is being swept up in the social media madness of Instagram, etc. So you can't blame them. Their attention spans they're being distracted constantly, and it happens through history that certain generations get swept away by new technologies. So I think that madness will temper out because ultimately human beings want facts. They want better lives. They want to see, and younger people especially want to see more equity, more compassion. That's universal. The second part of the question is corruption has corruption taken a backseat or have we forgotten? Corruption is a very strange phenomenon. So 2009, I was with the DNA, and I remember this very long-running argument with one of my senior editors. She said, "Look, nobody wants to hear stories of corruption. Why are you wasting time on it? You're good at strategic analysis, etc." I said, "No, but corruption is more important." A year later, I was in Times of India, and every story that we did led to investigations, resignations, jailing of people, and a mass movement erupted, right? So corruption is that hidden Godzilla in a society, and it will come up to change the course of society at certain times. And right now, it may look like that the society has a much higher threshold to corruption because they are bothered about secularism or their survival, etc., etc. But be assured that common man who is affected by corruption, he is not going to tolerate it forever. So that's what I'm saying, that whether it is Modi, who seems to think that he's almost what we call himself, he's not born. He's not biology. Even for him, he should be cautioned that look, there is an end to everything. All great rulers and all great authoritarians comes to an end, and that end happens through the anger of the sweaty poor masses, not by the loud discussions of elites like us.
What do you think independent media organizations can do? And before that, more specifically, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, how do you choose? There are a plethora of stories to do. Investigative journalism is expensive. It's not cheap. And there's a lot of work to be done. So how does one choose what to focus on and what to drop?
So I have, if you ask me, I think I think of it in very simple terms, that I should choose by what I'm capable of and what is most pressing for society. So I had an editor who, when I was doing an investigation in the mainstream, he told me, look, you should deploy your capability to investigate the chemicals being injected into chickens, because so much of chickens are being injected and it's health hazard, and that affects millions of people. Whereas I was investigating a major trust. Who cares about it? So I told him that maybe you should do that. Let me go and do my work. So I'm very clear about it, and the fact is that editor, he was trying to cover up his cowardice, the fear of taking on the government. The fact is that you need to choose that which can have the most strategic impact for society, for government, for betterment of tomorrow, right? And that choice is very simple. It is almost like doing a simple mathematical deduction, right? So I think that's one. The second is that in many contexts you can't make the choice because every story looks important. But even then, we have only a limited amount of time and resources and capabilities. So I would anyway choose that which has the maximum impact, even if it is the riskiest. Okay, so I think we should not look at what to choose based on the risk factors. We should look at the impact part.
Lastly, sir, what do you think independent media organizations, which may not necessarily on a day-to-day basis do investigative work, but independent media organizations like the News Minute, News Laundry, Scroll, The Wire, what do you think they have to offer? And what do you think events like these, where at the Media Rumble, it's day one of the Media Rumble, what do you think events like these do? What kind of spaces do they offer to the common public, if any at all?
I think, I'll tell you the good thing first. First, it is that at least we are, people like you are showing to the public that there is still spaces like this where you can fearlessly and talk, dissent, disagree all very peacefully as civilized people. That's a great part of it. But I do have my criticism. I think the independent media needs to be much more innovative than what it is today, because for the younger audience, for example, primary publishing platform is Instagram or the Twitter or Facebook. Are you the smartest guys there? No, you're not. You are actually, there are single guys sitting in some room in somewhere in Delhi or Bombay who's gathering millions of followers, even when he's talking about some UPSC simple question answers, right? So I think the storytelling needs to be reinvented, even if it is on a daily basis, even the smaller stories. And I think, and there is a huge opportunity because the core brand is strong. Because I think, especially News Laundry, News Minute, or Scrollwire, etc., I think they're all sitting on a huge brand cachet that they're failing to exploit. I understand, because one is financial constraints, but I think the day they're able to exploit it, we will see a new mainstream emerging.
All right. I'll take that as a mental note. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you.